There comes a moment in every person's life when silence becomes the loudest teacher, when your heart whispers truths that your ego has spent years trying to silence. And in that moment, you realize true courage isn't about standing tall, it's about standing real. We live in a world that celebrates perfection, but perfection is the enemy of connection. We scroll, we post, we filter, until we forget that what makes us human is not our highlight reel, but our healing journey. Vulnerability is not weakness, is the most honest form of strength. It takes guts to say, I don't know. It takes power to admit I'm scared, and it takes wisdom to still show up, heart wide open, even when you might fall. The people who have changed the world didn't do it because they were fearless. They did it because they were brave enough to feel their fear and keep moving. When you choose to be authentic, you give everyone else permission to do the same. And that is how change begins, not in a crowd, not on a stage, but in one quiet act of courage. So tonight I invite you to drop the armor, to stop performing and start living, because the world doesn't need another perfect person. The world needs you, raw, real, and beautifully unfinished. Courage comes from vulnerability, not from the absence of fear. We often imagine courage as something grand, loud, and fearless, but in truth, it begins quietly, deep within the soul. It's that trembling breath you take before you tell your story. It's that moment when your hands shake, your voice cracks, and yet you still choose to speak your truth. Vulnerability is not the weakness we've been taught to hide. It is the birthplace of every meaningful thing we have ever created. Love, trust, connection, and innovation. To be vulnerable means to open yourself to the possibility of being hurt, misunderstood, or rejected, and still have the bravery to show up anyway. That's what real courage looks like. We live in a culture that glorifies control. We are told to keep it together, to be strong, to never let them see you sweat. But real strength is not about holding everything inside. It's about having the heart to let it out, to stand in front of others and say, this is me. Imperfect, but real. Vulnerability invites authenticity, and authenticity is where courage truly lives. Because when you no longer waste energy pretending to be someone you're not, you discover a deeper power, the power to live fully, freely, and unapologetically. Think about the moments that have changed your life. They weren't the times you had all the answers. They were the moments you said yes, even when you were terrified. The moments you admitted, I need help. The moments you forgave someone, even when your pride wanted to hold on to the pain. That's vulnerability in motion. That's courage dressed in honesty. Every act of bravery you've ever witnessed in another person began with a single, raw truth they dared to face. It's easy to build walls. It's easy to stay guarded, to hide behind success, to wear confidence like armor. But behind every armor is a heartbeat longing to be seen. The greatest warriors are not the ones who never fall, but the ones who fall and rise again with open hearts. They've learned that courage doesn't mean you don't get hurt. It means you allow yourself to heal in the light of your truth. Vulnerability transforms how we love, how we lead, and how we live. In relationships, it means showing your heart before the other person promises to protect it. It means listening without preparing your defense. It means being willing to say, I was wrong, or I'm sorry, or I love you, without knowing how it will be received. That's where the magic happens, in the unknown, in the unpredictable, in the unguarded. The human spirit doesn't grow through certainty, it grows through openness. Courage rooted in vulnerability changes the way we connect with others. It turns walls into windows. It allows us to see the humanity in people we once judged or feared. When you are brave enough to share your story, you become a mirror for others to recognize themselves. You become proof that it's okay to feel deeply, to stumble, to start again. The world doesn't need more perfection. It needs more people who are willing to be real. So yes, courage comes from vulnerability, from standing naked in your truth when it would be easier to hide. It comes from saying yes to life in all its messiness. It comes from trusting that even when you fall, there will be hands, hearts, and hope waiting to lift you up. True courage doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers. It says, I'm scared, but I'm here. It says, I don't know what comes next, but I'm willing to try. And in that sacred moment of openness, you become powerful beyond measure because you have chosen to live, not behind walls, but in the wide, beautiful space of your own authenticity. Perfection blocks connection because perfection is a mask that keeps people at a distance. We spend so much of our lives trying to appear flawless and unshakable, thinking that if we can just get it all right, people will finally love us, respect us, or see our worth. But the truth is, perfection doesn't inspire closeness. It creates separation. When everything looks too perfect, people stop seeing you as real. They see an image, a performance, a version of you that's been carefully edited to meet expectations. And while that version might win admiration, it rarely earns connection. The more we try to look perfect, the lonelier we become because connection is built on truth, not illusion. We live in a world obsessed with appearances. Every photo, every caption, every post is crafted to present a life that seems effortless and beautiful. We polish our surfaces while our souls ache for someone to see beyond the gloss. Perfection tells the world, so that I'm fine even when you're breaking inside. It's a wall made of smiles, achievements, and the fear of not being enough. But here's the secret. No one connects through perfection. They connect through the cracks. The spaces where light and honesty slip through are where relationships grow and healing begins. People don't fall in love with your perfection. They fall in love with your humanness, your laughter, your mistakes, your vulnerability, your growth. When we hide our flaws, we also hide our hearts. And when we do that, we rob others of the chance to truly know us. True connection requires presence, not performance. It means being willing to show up even when you're uncertain, even when things are messy, and then when life doesn't look like the picture you had in your mind. That's where intimacy is born, in the middle of the real, raw, and unfiltered moments that can't be staged. Perfection is a form of control, and control is the opposite of connection. When you're busy managing how others see you, you stop listening to how you actually feel. You can't connect when your energy is spent curating yourself. Real relationships thrive on honesty, not on flawless impressions. When you let people see you, the unguarded, imperfect, evolving you invite them to drop their own walls. That's when two souls meet, not two performances. That's when empathy and understanding begin. Perfectionism also keeps us trapped in comparison. We measure our worth by someone else's highlight reel, forgetting that everyone's journey has unseen battles and silent tears. The chase for perfection becomes an endless race with no finish line because the standard keeps moving. You achieve one thing, and suddenly it's not enough. You fix one flaw, and another appears. You post one perfect picture, and still feel empty inside. That's because perfection is not a goal, it's a cage. And connection can't breathe in a cage. When you choose authenticity over perfection, something powerful happens. You start to attract people who value your truth instead of your image. You begin to find freedom in being seen for who you really are. You realize that the moments people remember you for are not the ones when everything went smoothly, but the ones where you showed up with heart. The time you cried but kept going, the moment you said, I don't have it all figured out, but I'm trying. Those are the moments that build trust and belonging. Perfection tells us that love is earned, by doing everything right. But connection whispers that love is given when we show up, even when we're wrong. The truth is, what imperfections are what make us relatable. They remind others that they're not alone in their struggles. When we drop the act, when we stop pretending, we allow grace to enter. The pressure lifts, the walls fall, and we start to live as we were meant to, free, honest, and connected. So stop trying to be perfect, because perfection blocks what your soul is craving most: genuine connection. Let yourself be seen as you are, not as the world expects you to be. The right people will recognize your light, not because it shines without flaw, but because it shines through them. Connection doesn't need perfect people, it needs real ones. And the moment you accept that your imperfection is your beauty, you'll finally understand what it means to truly belong. Silence teaches truth, because in silence we meet ourselves without the noise, without the distractions, without the constant hum of other people's opinions. We live in a world that never stops talking, where every second is filled with sound, movement, and demand. We are surrounded by voices telling us who to be, what to want, how to live, and when to move. But beneath all that noise, there is a quiet space inside every human being, a space where truth whispers softly. It never shouts. It never forces. It waits patiently for you to listen. Silence is where clarity lives, and truth is what rises when the world finally becomes still. In silence, we hear what we've been running from. We hear the echo of our fears, the weight of our unspoken dreams, and the pulse of what truly matters. Many people are afraid of silence because it reveals what's real. It shows us where we are broken, where we are longing, and where we are pretending. But that is also where healing begins. When the noise fades, the heart starts to speak. It reminds you of who you were before the world told you who to be. It brings you back to your center, your essence, your soul. Truth doesn't live in chaos, it lives in calm. When we constantly fill our lives with distraction, music, conversation, scrolling, planning, we drown out the inner voice that knows the way. The silence might feel uncomfortable at first, like standing in an empty room with no one to talk to. But the more you stay there, the more you realize that the silence is not empty. It's full of answers. It's full of wisdom, of direction, of understanding that words could never give you. The silence becomes a mirror, showing you not just what you want, but what you need to release. When you learn to sit with silence, you begin to develop a new kind of strength, the strength of stillness. It is the power of being calm in chaos, steady in uncertainty, and peaceful even when everything around you is loud. You begin to see that silence is not the absence of life, it's the foundation of it. The greatest decisions, the deepest insights, and the most powerful transformations often come from quiet moments of reflection. Think about the times you've had sudden clarity when an answer seemed to come out of nowhere. It didn't come from the noise, it came from the space between. Silence also teaches empathy. When we stop talking, we start listening to others, but to life itself, we start to notice details we used to miss. The tone in someone's voice, the emotion behind their words, the truth behind their silence. Real listening is an act of love, and love always begins in quiet awareness. Silence allows connection to deepen because it creates space for understanding, for compassion, for presence. In a noisy world, choosing silence is an act of courage. It means turning off the world long enough to hear your own heartbeat. It means facing your truth even when it's uncomfortable. It means trusting that the answers you seek are not somewhere out there. They are within you, waiting for you to be still enough to receive them. Every wise soul, every great leader, every person who has truly known peace has spent time in silence. Because silence doesn't just calm the mind, it awakens the spirit. The truth that silence reveals is simple yet profound. You are enough. You are guided, and you already have everything you need to move forward. The noise of the world tells you that you must do more, be more, achieve more, but silence reminds you that you are already whole. In that stillness, you find a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, a truth that doesn't change with opinion, and a strength that can't be shaken by the chaos around you. Silence is not emptiness. It is fullness beyond words. It is where your truth begins and where your power quietly waits. Authenticity inspires others because when we choose to live truthfully, we give the people around us silent permission to do the same. There is something deeply magnetic about a person who is real. They do not need to impress. They do not need to perform. And they do not hide behind masks of perfection or power. Their presence alone speaks louder than their words. When someone lives authentically, they become a mirror for others to see what freedom looks like. They remind us that we don't have to pretend to be perfect in order to be loved, that we don't have to hide our struggles in order to be respected, and that our worth was never dependent on how flawless we appear, but on how honest we are. We all crave authenticity because it speaks to something ancient and sacred inside us. The desire to be seen and accepted for who we truly are. When we encounter someone authentic, we feel safe. Their openness disarms our defenses. Their truth touches something deep within us that says, I can be real too. This is why authenticity is powerful. It spreads like light, one honest soul igniting another. The more we embrace who we truly are, the more we allow others to release their own pretenses. It's not about being perfect. It's about being present. It's about standing in your truth, even when it shakes. Authenticity is not about sharing every detail of your life or being brutally honest without kindness. It's about alignment, the alignment between what you believe, what you feel, and what you show to the world. When your words, actions, and values match, people feel it. They trust it. Because the human heart can sense truth even when the mind doubts it. Authentic people carry an energy that says, I am not here to prove myself. I am here to live myself. And that energy means transformation in others. In a society built on comparison, authenticity becomes an act of rebellion. We are constantly told who we should be, what success should look like, and how to fit into molds that were never meant for us. But authenticity refuses to conform. It says, I choose to belong to myself first. That kind of courage is contagious. When one person dares to live honestly, others begin to question their own masks. They begin to wonder, what if I could just be me? And that small question has the power to change lives. Authenticity also builds connection because people connect through truth, not through perfection. When you show your real emotions, when you admit your failures, when you share your lessons with humility, you create bridges instead of walls. You make others feel less alone. There is strength in saying, I've been there too. The most inspiring leaders, creators, and healers are not the ones who stand above others, but the ones who stand beside them saying, I understand. Authenticity is the bridge between souls. It doesn't demand attention. It commands respect through honesty. The world doesn't need more polished performances. It needs more genuine hearts. Every time you choose to speak your truth, instead of what is popular, you light a path for someone lost in pretense. Every time you show kindness instead of perfection, you remind others that humanity matters more than image. Every time you honor your boundaries and stand by your values, you teach others that integrity is still powerful in a world built on appearances. Your authenticity becomes your legacy. It's how your presence continues to move others long after your words are forgotten. Being authentic takes courage because it means facing rejection, misunderstanding, and sometimes even loneliness. But the reward is peace, the kind of peace that comes from knowing you are living in alignment with your soul. And that peace is the greatest gift you can offer the world. When people see you living freely, they start to believe they can too. When they see you fail and rise again without shame, they begin to trust their own strength. That is how authenticity changes the world, not by shouting, not by forcing, but by quietly shining. So live your truth without apology. Be kind, be honest, be real. You never know who is watching, who is listening, or who needs the courage that your authenticity awakens. Your realness might just be the permission someone else needs to finally take off their mask and breathe. And that, more than anything else, is what makes authenticity not just beautiful, but transformative. Bravery means feeling the fear, not avoiding it. It means standing in the middle of uncertainty with your knees shaking and your heart pounding, and still deciding to move forward. Fear is not the enemy. It is the evidence that you are alive, growing, and stepping into something that matters. Every person who has ever done something meaningful has felt fear. Every breakthrough, every transformation, every moment of courage has existed alongside trembling hands and racing thoughts. True bravery is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to take action despite it. It is the understanding that fear will always be there, whispering doubts, but that it does not have the final say. We often believe that brave people are somehow different from us, that they are born fearless or naturally strong. But that is not true. Brave people feel fear just as deeply as anyone else. They just choose not to let it define their path. They have learned that fear is a signal, not a stop sign. It is the body's way of saying, pay attention, something important is happening. Instead of running from it, they lean in. They ask, what is this fear trying to teach me? They understand that growth never happens inside comfort. The courage to face fear is what builds strength, resilience, and confidence. Fear often disguises itself as logic. It tells you to wait for the perfect moment, to be more prepared, to play it safe. It promises you comfort, but steals your potential. Bravery means recognizing that voice and choosing to act anyway. It means trusting that you can handle whatever happens next. You don't have to be fearless to be brave. You just have to be willing. Every act of bravery, no matter how small, is a declaration that your dreams are stronger than your doubts. It's the quiet voice inside that says, I'll try again tomorrow. Even after failure, it's showing up for yourself when no one is watching, when everything inside you wants to give up. Bravery also means being honest about your fears instead of pretending they don't exist. It's okay to say, I'm scared. It's okay to admit that you don't have all the answers. That honesty doesn't make you weak, it makes you real. When you acknowledge your fear, you take away its power. You start to see it for what it is, a feeling, not a fact. Feelings pass, but the decisions you make in the face of them shape who you become. Fear might visit you, but bravery is choosing not to let it stay. Life will always test your courage. There will be moments when you stand at the edge of something new and everything you will want to retreat. But that is also where the magic happens, at the edge of fear. When you take that step, even the smallest one, you begin to rewrite the story your fear has been telling. You prove to yourself that you are capable, that you can survive discomfort, that you can rise. Every brave step you take makes the next one easier, because courage grows through repetition. Bravery is not loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet and steady. It's the mother who keeps going when she's exhausted. It's the student who raises their hand even when their voice shakes. It's the person who decides to forgive instead of hate, to speak truth instead of stay silent, to love again after being hurt. These are the everyday acts of courage that shape humanity. They remind us that bravery is not reserved for heroes on battlefields, but for anyone who faces life with an open heart. When you live bravely, you inspire others to do the same. Your courage becomes a ripple that spreads further than you can imagine. Someone somewhere will see your strength and think, If they can do it, and maybe I can too. And that is how change begins, with one person daring to feel fear and still move forward. Fear will always whisper, but bravery speaks louder. It says, Wes, I'm afraid, but I'm still here. I'm still trying. I'm still alive. That is the essence of bravery, to keep walking through the storm, trusting that every step through fear brings you closer to freedom. Healing over hiding is one of the hardest lessons we can learn, because hiding feels safe. It feels familiar. It feels like protection. When we are hurt, disappointed, or broken, our first instinct is to cover the wound, to pretend we're fine, to smile through the pain so no one sees how much we're struggling. But healing cannot happen in the dark. Healing begins when we bring our pain into the light, when we stop hiding from it and start understanding it. The act of healing requires honesty, patience, and courage. It means sitting with your emotions instead of numbing them, facing your past instead of running from it, and allowing yourself to be seen as you truly are, even when it hurts. Hiding may feel like control, but it is really just fear disguised as safety. When we hide our wounds, we are not protecting ourselves, we are imprisoning ourselves. The walls we build to keep others out also keep us locked in. We begin to live smaller, quieter, more guarded lives. Healing, on the other hand, asks us to open those walls, to trust that our pain has something to teach us. It invites us to step into the messy, uncomfortable process of feeling, forgiving, and releasing. Healing is not pretty. It is not quick. It's a slow unfolding, a returning home to yourself after being lost in the shadows. There is strength in facing your wounds. There is grace in allowing yourself to fall apart. We live in a world that celebrates strength as the ability to hold it all together. But real strength is the courage to fall apart and still choose to rebuild. Healing is an act of defiance against everything that tried to break you. It says, I will not let my pain define me. I will let it refine me. It means looking at your scars and saying, Wes, I've been through fire, but I'm still here. Every scar carries a story, and every story has the potential to heal someone else who feels alone in their pain. Hiding may protect your image, but it costs you your peace. It drains your energy to keep pretending. It keeps you disconnected from others, because true connection can only exist in truth. When you hide your pain, you carry it alone, but when you share it, you begin to release it. Healing happens in connection, in conversations that are raw, in tears that are shared, in moments when someone says, we were never meant to heal in isolation. We were meant to heal in community, through love, through understanding, through compassion. The path of healing requires forgiveness, not necessarily for others, but for yourself. It means forgiving the parts of you that stayed silent when you should have spoken, the times you accepted less than you deserved, the moments you didn't know better. Healing is about reclaiming your power from the pain that once controlled you. It's about choosing peace over resentment, growth over bitterness, and light over hiding. It's understanding that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without being broken by it. Sometimes healing looks like rest. Sometimes it looks like crying. Sometimes it looks like laughter after months of silence. Healing is not a straight line. It's a spiral that brings you back to yourself layer by layer, until you can finally breathe freely again. The beautiful thing about healing is that it turns pain into wisdom, fear into faith, and suffering into strength. When you stop hiding your pain, you begin to transform it. What once felt like your greatest weakness becomes your greatest source of empathy and resilience. To choose healing over hiding is to choose freedom. It is saying, I no longer want to carry this alone. It is choosing to step out of shame and into acceptance. It's a gentle rebellion against everything that told you to keep quiet. Healing doesn't mean you forget what hurt you. It means you no longer allow it to control you. The moment you stop hiding, your wounds begin to breathe. They begin to close naturally, not because you forced them to, but because you allowed yourself to be human. Healing is the most powerful declaration of self-love. It says, I am worthy of peace. I am worthy of light. I am worthy of becoming whole again. Be the light by being yourself, because the world doesn't need copies. It needs originals. Every person carries a unique light within them, a light made up of their experiences, their emotions, their strengths, and even their scars. Too often we dim that light trying to fit to someone else's idea of who we should be. We compare, we conform, we adjust ourselves to meet expectations that were never meant for us. But your light was never designed to look like anyone else's. It was meant to shine in its own way, with its own warmth, its own rhythm, its own truth. When you try to be like others, the world loses the very magic that only you can bring. Being yourself is not about standing out, it's about standing true. It means honoring your values, your feelings, and your dreams, even when the world doesn't understand them. It means choosing integrity over approval, authenticity over acceptance. When you live as your true self, you naturally become a light for others, not because you're trying to impress them, but because truth has its own glow. People are drawn to those who are real, who are comfortable in their own skin, who do not pretend to be more or less than they are. Your honesty becomes a guiding star for those who have lost their own direction. The world can often feel dark, filled with pain, judgment, and noise. But light doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. Sometimes light is a kind word, a gentle smile, a quiet act of courage. It's choosing love when bitterness would be easier. It's showing kindness when you've been hurt. It's standing up for truth even when your voice shakes. Every time you show up as your authentic self, you remind others that it's possible to live with both strength and softness. That is what being the light means. Not perfection, but presence. Not dominance, but depth. There will be times when being yourself feels difficult. The world may tell you that you're too different, too quiet, too emotional, too bold, or too much. But those very things that make you too much are the exact things that make you powerful. The light within you doesn't need permission to shine. It just needs your trust. You don't have to shrink to make others comfortable. You don't have to hide your light to avoid attention. When you embrace who you are, you give everyone else permission to do the same. That is how light multiplies. It spreads, it expands, and it heals. Being the light doesn't mean you'll never experience darkness. It means you've learned how to shine through it. Your struggles, your heartbreaks, your failures, all of these become part of your glow. They teach you empathy, compassion, and strength. You cannot truly be the light if you have never known the dark, because darkness is what shapes your brilliance. The cracks in your heart are not flaws. They're openings for light to enter and flow through you. Every time you rise, after falling, you become a brighter version of yourself. When you live as the light, you change the energy around you. You become a reminder that hope still exists, that kindness still matters, that truth still has power. People feel safe around those who shine from within, not because they are perfect, but because they are real. You become a safe space for others to breathe, to heal, to believe again. That is the quiet revolution of authenticity. It doesn't force change. It inspires it. It doesn't preach, it radiates. The most beautiful part of being yourself is realizing that your light doesn't have to compete with anyone else's. The sky is filled with countless stars, and not one tries to outshine the other. Each simply shines where it is, in its own time, in its own brilliance. You too are a star, placed exactly where you're meant to be. So let your light shine through your kindness, your creativity, your truth, and your love. The world may not always notice, but someone will. Someone lost in their own darkness will see your light and find their way again. And that, more than anything else, is why being yourself is the greatest gift you can offer the world. In the end, this entire message comes down to one simple, powerful truth. The world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more real ones. We have spent so long chasing approval, hiding our pain, and fearing that who we are is not enough. But every moment of courage, every spark of connection, every act of healing begins when we choose to be seen as we truly are. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the birthplace of strength. Authenticity is not rebellion. It is freedom. When we drop the masks and let our true selves emerge, we begin to live, not just exist. We inspire others to do the same, to face their fears, to stop hiding, to embrace their imperfect beauty. Our light grows brighter each time we choose truth over pretense, compassion over judgment, and courage over comfort. This is the invitation to live openly, to speak honestly, to love deeply, and to walk through this world as yourself, because that is where transformation begins, not in the image you show to others, but in the truth you live within yourself. Be brave enough to feel, bold enough to heal, and kind enough to let your light guide others home. The world doesn't need you to be perfect. It just needs you to be you,